You probably don't need me to tell you that Frieren is a dang good show, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So I just finished watching it last night as of recording this video, and man, it surpassed all expectations. I don't want to get ahead of myself, so let's start right from the beginning, literally. The openings were really good. I mean, come on, Yoasobi, I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm assuming that's what it is, never misses. She always pumps out absolute bangers. The second intro was also quite good. I usually don't like that style of music, but it jived really well with the whole vibe that the show's got going, so I think it totally worked. It's a vibe I've seen in common with things like Delicious in Dungeon, a new genre I sort of like to call feel-good fantasy. Just doesn't take itself too seriously. And I mean, come on, just the soundtrack as a whole, it's pretty spectacular. It's made by one of my new favorite composers, Evan Call. It's actually a pretty crazy coincidence, because he's also the guy who wrote the music for Violet Evergarden, which is the show I just recently made a video on. Safe to say he delivered just as hard as he delivered for Violet, a literal 70-song long soundtrack filled to the brim with peak music and zero misses. Especially because not only are they good listens on their own, but they also go super well with D&D ambient music for both combat and exploration. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I mean, come on, who starts with music when they review a show? I don't know, it was just sort of the natural flow, so don't at me. But let's dial it back to some other aspects we got going here. I should probably start with the plot, given that it's, sort of important when talking about a show. I really love how they did the story and pacing here for this. It reminds me a ton of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. The idea of someone traveling around just letting life take them wherever they go, since the big parts of their story and their journey are already done with. It gives you a really nice window into the character's head when you can see them recollect the adventure they've been on and are now embarking on new ones. Which is why, without a doubt, if you liked Frieren, I think you'd love Cowboy Bebop. Expanding now slightly to the world building, Frieren has done something really interesting here. They've struck a perfect balance of recognizable yet different. A lot of fantasy works these days feel like they need to have completely new ideas in order to stand out, but shows like Delicious in Dungeon and Frieren counteract that. A lot of Frieren's strengths come from the fact that the fantasy is quite recognizable. There isn't really a need to explain dragons and magic and dwarves and demons, etc. We're used enough to it that we can dedicate screen time not just to flashy lore, but getting to know our characters well. And it's not me trying to say the setting is boring, just that the comfort we get from already being familiar with the fundamentals lets us get right into the meat of the show without needing a few episodes to acclimate to a strange new world. The magic system is also really open and versatile, so the characters get to feel unique not only in personality, but the cool ways they use magic that no one else does. It's a really nice way to distinguish between the characters and keep action scenes engaging, because there's always new spells and fighting styles popping up to make sure things really stay fresh. And on the topic of characters, oh boy, they cooked here. Every single character that was introduced always had me initially thinking to myself, oh, it's one of those tropes, and writing them off as boring or cliche. But then within an episode or two, they have you super endeared to them and totally subverting the generic expectations you'd have. Not in a huge twisty way, but just by making them feel like normal, real people, not just fantasy characters. People are never just good or just bad. They're not just people who are supposed to drive the plot in this way or they always do this thing. They're just people doing things. It's a nice change of pace to have a show where you don't really hate a single character because they're all just endearing in their own way. And because of this, the interactions between all the main characters feel very candid and enjoyable to watch. The show is slower paced and doesn't take itself too seriously, which once again makes it so easy to just sit back and enjoy your time with the characters just being themselves. I've said it many times before, but a fantastic fantasy setting, theme, soundtrack, or whatever else you want can only take you so far. But the characters are what truly make or break the whole thing. You can have generic aspects, weak aspects, or even lack of aspects in a story, but if the characters are written well enough for the audience to care about them, your story can still totally flourish. Frieren herself is obviously the best example of this. She's not just the know-it-all stuck-up elf who thinks she's better than everyone. She subverts expectations, is quite relatable, and only grows more likable the more time you spend with her. Is this because she sleeps way too late and is too lazy to do basically anything? Maybe. Is that why she's relatable? No comment. The other two of the main cast are similar, at first seeming like they'll just be one beat and predictable, but both ending up quite different and way more engaging than you'd expect them to be at first glance. Even the side characters pull this off, which allows every single interaction to feel great because you're always happy to see everyone on screen. It never feels like time is being wasted on characters you don't really care about. That's exactly why I think Frieren works so well. You aren't getting bogged down in lore, artsy poetry, giant fight scenes, huge distractions, etc. It really just peels everything back and lets the characters shine through and speak to the viewer in a really simple but effectively elegant way. Don't get the wrong impression though, because yeah, the show is pretty chill, it's really relaxed, it's happy, etc. However, the fight scenes do go hard, and the show had a lot more than I expected, because I had heard a decent amount of the show, and I thought it would just be really chill and relaxed, but we do have some crazy good action scenes, so even though the majority of the time it's pretty relaxed, there actually is some super duper good action. I mean, if you just look at the background footage, like, we got some crazy impact frames, super flashy spells, and believe me, there's like 10 other fight scenes that are just as cool. There's plenty of awesome stuff here. So if you do like action, there's still something for you. Alright, that's probably enough on the writing for now. How's about we shift over to the production itself? I already touched on the music, very good, big fan. As per the other parts though, they were also really good. The animation quality was about what you'd expect from a show of this caliber, especially from Madhouse, who's known for cooking up some pretty banger iconic stuff. Why? Because they just included so many tiny details that brought the enjoyment to a whole new level. Little details that let you know the animators cared and notice each little thing about the frame. Like how you see little Frieren faces in the reflections of characters' eyes, or someone's lip will twitch as they yawn. Yet again, it just brings you one layer closer to the characters that most shows don't, which makes it feel like you're right there with them and enjoying the journey just like they are. And a little side note, since I'm already talking about animation, the ending was one of the best endings I've seen probably ever. The music was great, but the art style was totally bonkers, in a good way. It looked like some Renaissance botanical journal, super pretty and a little trippy. And then they level it up even further by popping claymation in there. Dude, I don't know whose idea that was, but they totally cooked with that. It's a really nice little aesthetic to end every single episode on. And going back to the soundtrack for just 1 second, so remember how I said it's written by the same dude who wrote the Violet Evergarden soundtrack? Well, that is not where the similarities end. Because if I had $1 for every time I've seen a TV show about a small, pale-haired girl who travels the world with a suitcase helping all sorts of people in small ways, while coming to terms with how to feel emotions and connect with people after all their flashbacks about an old fighting companion who tried to reach them about compassion and also cared a lot about jewelry from said companion, I'd have $2, because that show is both of these. Which is why I think if you really like Frieren, you would also not only have to watch Cowboy Bebop, but I'd also highly recommend Violet Evergarden. They're really good for similar reasons and have a coincidentally high amount of similarities. So at the end of the day, do I recommend the show? Indeed, I do. A subversive, relaxing, but intense when it needs to be masterpiece, filled to the brim with lovely visuals, exquisite songs, and down-to-the-earth, incredibly likable characters. What's not there to like? Another thing I like about it is the fact that it isn't terribly long. Only 28 episodes as of right now, so you don't even have to commit half a lifetime to finishing it. Looking at you, One Piece fans. And there you have it, just a quick little review I have for Frieren. I sort of just like making videos about stuff that I enjoyed. You might have noticed I'm pivoting my videos a teensy bit to just sort of talk about what I enjoyed and maybe introduce you to something new. So I hope you find a new favorite show because of this, or if you already have seen Frieren, I hope I sort of voiced my opinions on it in the way I was trying to. Here's the people who answered the question at the end of last video, and if you answer this question this video, then you'll make it onto the end of the next one. My question for you today is, what's your favorite fantasy work? Could be a book, a movie, a video game, whatever, but just something that happens with fantasy, Lord of the Rings, etc. Alright, and that'll be it for now. I'll see you guys in a week-ish with a new video, and till then, I hope you have an amazing day. Like if you like the video, subscribe if you subscribe to the video, etc., etc., etc. Join the Discord if you want, and other than that, goodbye.